welcome to the Alakh Singh Memorial Lecture. The lecture is being delivered by Ms. Gabriela Ramos. She's the Assistant Director General, Social and Human Sciences, UNESCO Paris. I request her to please grace the dais. Please come on the dais, Gabriela. Yes, this calls for a huge round of applause. The lecture is being chaired by Professor Alakh N. Sharma, who's Professor and Director of the Institute for Human Development, New Delhi, and the President of Indian Society of Labor Economics. He has made contributions to research in varied areas such as livelihoods, poverty, employment, labor markets, and development issues. During his academic career, spanning over 40 years, he has directed, coordinated around 50 research projects in the above areas. He has authored, edited, co-edited several books and published over 50 research papers in various journals. He's also the editor of Indian Journal of Labor Economics, the Quarterly Journal of Indian Society of Labor Economics. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Kindly grace the dais. I also request Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi, the Honorable Vice Chancellor of Nalanda University and the Chairman of IASSI, to kindly grace the dais. I request Professor Alakh N. Sharma to please conduct this session.
Ms. Gabriela Ramos, Professor Sachin Chaturvedi, ladies and gentlemen, warm welcome to you and very good morning to this very important session of this conference, Alakh Singh Memorial Lecture. Who was the founder of this association, IASSI. Just to tell you very briefly about, although a handout has been given to you about Alakh Singh. Annually, this lecture is organized every year by the society. Alakh Singh was some kind of an extraordinary person of India. He was born in Pakistan, came here as a refugee, he appeared in ICS, and you can understand the importance of Indian civil servant in those days. And during 47-48, he was made in charge of all rehabilitation. Millions of refugees were coming, and he did in a superb manner. Jawaharlal Nehru was very impressed with him. He made him his secretary and gave him the responsibility of preparing first 5-year plan of India. And Alakh Singh was so involved. So by the way, he was a voracious reader in planning process. I think 10 years he remained there, did not seek any secretaries or any other post. He was involved in that. Generally it was called about planning commission, it is Alakh Sabha. So much was his importance in planning commission. He was an alumnus of London School of Economics and a very dear student of legendary Harold Lasky. But at the same time, he was a great scholar, wrote several books. One of the books on behalf of IASSI, which he edited and wrote, Women in India, something like 50 years ago, important women in India in 100 years. That book was published by National Book Trust, and still more than 1 lakh rupee royalties comes to IASSI for that book after 40 years regularly. He wrote on Indian planning, and of course he was interested not only in that, variety of issues. He strongly felt that social science research should be multidisciplinary. It was during that time, nobody thought about it. And many people worked with him. K.R. Narayanan, who became President of India, he was also a signatory to the formation of IASSI and many other people, but K.R. Narayanan particularly. So Alakh Singh has a very big legacy, and probably only Indian who get Padma Shri, later on Padma Bhushan, and then Padma Vibhushan. So with these words, I want to, and the lecture, I'm very happy, very appropriate person. This is being delivered by Mrs. Gabriela Ramos, Assistant Director General, UNESCO. I will request Dr. Sachin to introduce her, but just to say that the topic that she has chosen for the lecture, beyond the invisible hand, how science can redress policy-induced inequalities, is extremely important in current world. Most of the countries in the world are expressing huge inequalities, whichever country you say, lesser and larger, whatever the magnitude. And technology has, of course, globalization had accelerated it, but technology has given fillip to it. Technology and science, science can, but very interesting how science and technology has accelerated this inequality, but she, in her lecture, probably is going to deal with how science can reduce inequality. So something innovative, like artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence can increase inequality, but at the same time, like productivity. Low productivity areas can be more productive with AI. So these are the balances, and we look forward to her lecture, but before that, I request Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi to introduce her.
Thank you, sir. I think stage is already set by Professor Alakh Sharma. We know the topic, we know the speaker. Little more addition to her introduction to you, and I have been asked to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure and honor for us to have Gabriela Ramos with us, graduated from University Iberoamericana in Mexico. She's a Mexican. Later, she studied at Harvard. And the best part for our context today, not only that she is Assistant Secretary General UNESCO, but she has worked immensely in terms of how we see economy, the whole question of inequality in global relations. So she was G20 Sherpa for OECD. She was also head of the Secretary General's team in OECD. And now she has shifted to UNESCO, where her task is something that is extremely exciting for us to see that she is trying to bridge the gap between natural and social sciences. She is trying to see how UNESCO can address in a meaningful manner issues which are of societal concern. She led a huge process with more than 100 countries, 190 countries, Gabriela? 190 countries, 194 to be precise, if I recall right, countries that she led, coordinated, and evolved world's unique guidelines on how AI is to be governed. The governance of AI she has established. I do not know how far they are prepared now when some of the heads of states are saying that AI should be left free. We should not bring in governance for artificial intelligence. Those who are pushing in for cryptocurrency, those who are pushing in for investment by dictatorial regimes for AI are also thinking that AI governance is no more needed. We had huge debates when the genetically modified products were introduced at that point, and Dr. Nagesh is sitting here. We had in RIS a huge program to bring in GM governance across the global south. Professor Mahendra Dev, who is sitting here as part of agriculture economics, the issues that came up in GM governance, the productivity measurements, etc., and the societal aspirations in terms of governance. I think Gabriela is a huge contributor at the global level to see this happening. As Professor Alakh Sharma rightly mentioned, today's topic is in terms of leveraging science and technology for reducing inequality. Gabriela, in India, we have introduced the democratization of information communication technology, ICT, that has its own contribution and impact. But I would not take away any thunder from your speech. I would very much like to request you to deliver the memorial lecture for Trilok Singh Ji. So thank you. Thanks.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this very kind invitation and introduction. And it's great to be here with our dear friend Sachin Chaturvedi. I always say that whenever he calls, we come. Great to be in this fantastic university, Vice Chancellor. Thank you for inviting us. Professor Sharma, great to have in the company of those that are doing the real politics, Mr. Dev and Mr. Kumar. And great to be with you, because this is the Association of Social and Institutions, Social Sciences Institutions. I think it is upon us to reflect how can we enhance the capacity of these sciences to provide with answers for the challenges we face. And for me, it's really a great pleasure to do it under the banner of Mr. Trilok Singh. You gave me the opportunity, actually, to review his work. Of course, everybody knows him as a precursor of understanding what it means to be human, how economics can capture the complexity of human lives, how could we address issues like poverty, not only as a lack of income, but actually as a set of constraints that are preventing people from fulfilling their full potential, with this humanistic view, but also very, very action-oriented in terms of how science can deliver for policies. And this is what I would like to focus today, not only because we are in the context of artificial intelligence, misinformation, disinformation, lack of evidence for taking policies in many parts of the world, very complex issues that we are confronting, not in silos. We are not going to solve climate by addressing climate. We're going to do it by addressing poverty. We're going to do it by taking technology together, and therefore the complexity of the systems that need to be built up for delivering on these things. But also because I feel that we have the opportunity now to revisit the insights of so many science that have been left behind when defining economic policies. And this is what I want to share with you. And I actually am humble because I'm standing here in a country that has been growing 7% for the past 3 decades. You must have done something right. And therefore, I should ask you to come here and tell us a little bit how have this happened. But we know that India is also confronting some of the greatest challenges in terms of inequalities, in terms of the gaps between those that are really well ahead and those that are lagging behind. So I feel it's very important that we do this reflection and try to be much more humble in terms of looking at the insights of different sciences. Now, I also want to put in front of you a thought, because we have been following in the economic profession, in the economics, the macro reflection of the neoclassical economies. And these neoclassical economies has established assumptions of representative agents, of average income, per capita income, maximizing GDP, maximizing production, all which is fine because we all need growth, but that have left behind 2 aspects that are very important and that I want to put in front so that we can then discuss it more thoroughly, which is the equity and sustainability considerations. It's not only about growth by itself, but how do we ensure that the distributions of the benefits of growth are better distributed? And then how do we ensure that it's sustainable over the lifetime, actually given the challenges, as I mentioned, of climate change? This has been informing our economic policies in the last decades, the famous consensus of Washington, and it's very interesting because We would have thought that with the financial crisis, we would have thought that with the climate change, the tenets of this narrative would have just eroded away, but it's not. And it's not because we have been looking at measuring success by GDP growth, measuring success by how much we produce, how much we consume, and human beings as consumers, producers, or labor in the equation for the growth paradigm. So this is the kind of things that we need to revisit and to ensure that we are more able to capture the reality with tools and with evidence that is much more attuned to deliver much better. And why do we need that? You know the facts. I don't need to tell you. The gaps in inequalities, the gaps not only in inequalities of income. We know that now the top 10% might have 20 times the bottom 20 in terms of income, but that's not the whole story. We know now that 70% of wealth in the world, I'm talking about globally, each country has its own facts, but globally, 70% of wealth is held in the hands of the top 10%. And I was talking to Professor Dev, 70%, 10%. But if you go to the highest of the income deciles, to the top 5%, they have 45% of wealth. And if we would say, well, this is a picture, we're taking a picture, 70%, okay, we need to do something about it. It's not a picture, it's a film because it's growing. Financial assets are so concentrated in the hands of the few that this is not really allowing for the trickle-down effect that we were always told that whenever growth resumes, everybody will benefiting from it. And therefore, this is creating this feeling discontent for those that feel that economic growth has not been as fair as it should. And then if you dig down into some of the other elements for what matters for people, the question of opportunities. As Sachin mentioned, I was for many years the chief of staff and Sherpa to the OECD, and we launched a program actually with very close with cooperating with the government of India on the question of inclusive growth. But the fact is that when you see the numbers and when you see the issues, you disentangle the questions, and we know that 75% of the chances that people have in life are linked to their socioeconomic status of their parents. How do we break that? Why are we, this is a fatality? Are we Shakespearean, all of us? Because we were born in the rural area where our parents were not able to finish primary school, we will never break those incepts of our lives? This is very important because this is being proven. And even in the more advanced economies at the OECD, where they are measuring these things, 30% of the people that are called the middle class live in vulnerability, meaning that if they have a shock, like we have had with the financial crisis in 2008, or the COVID in 2019, or climate, you name it, they will only have 3 months income to face the challenge. This is very high vulnerability. And what to say people living in poverty is the very first time in the 3 decades that we have confronted that poverty is growing all around the world. So these are the contexts in which we are. And I don't know why this is not higher in the international agenda. I feel this is something that we really need to remember the lessons of Mr. Singh and try to put it higher in the agenda, because this is informing many other topics that we need to grapple with. Climate change. Climate change, we know what we need to do with climate change. We need to dewire from carbon. We need to put a price on carbon. Who's bearing the cost? As Professor Chaturvedi mentioned, I am the Social and Human Sciences Assistant Director General of UNESCO. I know you know UNESCO for culture and for education, but we're also the house that is promoting science. We produced a report because we were trying to think, if this is so straightforward, that we need to put a price on carbon, it's very straight. Why it is not working? Well, because the distributional impact of those policies are very unequal. And we know that those that are less prepared to face the climate transition are, again, those at the bottom of the income distribution. And the report that we produce, actually, the report is named Who's Bearing the Cost, because the 10% in the top income earners generate almost half of the CO2 emissions, while the most vulnerable countries like Chad, South Sudan, Niger, Central Africa, and South Africa have compounded crises of poverty, weak infrastructure, and climate stress. We saw it in France. Whenever there was an attempt to increase the price of gasoline, those that went to the streets were those that cannot bear that cost. And therefore, again, these things are interlinked. It's not that we are going to address one thing without addressing the others. And then the other element, and I feel this is for the core economists, financial economists that might be here in the public, the financialization of our economies. The size or the share of finance in our economies. The fact that the financial market more and more is delivering profits because of their own financial activities and not because they are linked to the productive capacities of the countries. The buyback shares, the investments in financial instruments that are completely delinked from the productive capacities of our societies. And again, this is fueling the inequalities. So these are the kind of issues that we really need to be grappling with, and where sciences and social and human sciences need to deliver much better. And then you bring the amazing capacity of artificial intelligence. As you mentioned, Sachin, at UNESCO, we have delivered the very first global standard, because we got together 5 years ago when I joined UNESCO. We got together with 193 countries, and we produced a recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence. And I feel that this is an important instrument because, again, it's not about the technologies itself. I know that it's so interesting to learn a little bit more about generative AI. We know that every new development in artificial intelligence is bringing more capacities of these technologies. And then the reflection is when they are going to surpass all of our intellectual capacities of us humans. Because now it's generative, and then it's agentic AI, and then there will be something else because it's compounding in terms of the capacities of resolving issues that are becoming more and more complex in an autonomous manner. And therefore, the technologies by themselves are just something that is amazing. But that's not the point. The point is how these technologies are going to help us or not to build the societies, the economies we want. This is the question. What is the social impact? And again, the way the transition is happening, the technological revolution is happening, is contributing with more inequalities, because it's only 3 countries around the world, the US, China, and the UK, who are producing 90% of all the AI developments. Again, India here is a very interesting case because you have been putting the elements there to take advantage of these developments, but it's not the same all over the world. It's not the same because you still have 1/3 of the world population which is not connected to internet. So yes, the headlines are amazing in terms of the new developments. The headlines are amazing of the unfolding of the protein structures. The headlines are amazing in terms of having agentic AI that can help you take all of the administrative work and put it somewhere, and then allow, for example, university professors to focus on those things that are more strategically attractive. Yes, but at the end, the point is how do we frame and govern these technologies in a way that allow us to be much more inclusive in the development. There are some good news, though. I feel that The reduction in the cost of developing the applications is amazing. We're looking forward for India that is hosting the next edition of the AI Action Summit. I feel is next year. And the whole reflection is how do we ensure that these technologies benefit all? And to do that, we come back to the challenges that we have been confronting, because we're about skills, we're about infrastructure, we're about knowledge, we're about having education systems that allow us to deliver on the talents that are required for these very highly technological advanced economies. So now, what do we do with that? And that's, I guess, the more difficult question. I have actually been reviewing the discussions that you had during the last 2 days. And I want to congratulate you, because you're going into very detailed elements of climate, very detailed elements of human development, very detailed elements of gender, of issues that need to have this granularity of understanding of the dynamics of each one of the phenomena that social and human sciences need to be addressing. But how do we bring this knowledge out when people are taking policy decisions? And this is the real thing. When you have a Council of Economic Advisors, it's great, but how do we ensure that, of course, policies are always informed by politics, policies are always informed by power, policies are always informed by institutions, but at the end, how do we push in this world of misinformation and disinformation for policies to be well rooted in evidence coming from different sciences, but also how do we move away from, as I mentioned, the frameworks that we have been using and that have produced this very complex scenario. And how do we change the narrative? How do we ensure that we are not here just thinking about material well-being as the only thing that matters for people? Because people have hopes, have dreams, have desires that are beyond economic or income issues. And this is one of the lessons of Tarlock. Of course, if you don't have income, if you don't have material well-being, it's very difficult that you achieve any other good development in your lives. But it's not the only thing. And so we need to change the narrative. We need to change those analytical frameworks that overrated the question of material well-being and try to move into frameworks that will allow us to understand better what matters for people. And there has been some efforts that I commend. At the OECD, we launched the new approaches to economic challenges. I think this was a very good attempt to bring complexity science into the discussion, a very good attempt to bring behavioral economics, to move away from thinking about humans as rational agents that are representative, average citizen. There is no average citizen of the world, but rather to understand what informs people's actions and how we can capture that much better. How do we bring culture into this discussion? How do we understand context? And again, is a Nobel Prize of India, Mr. Banerjee, who is trying to embed the cultural issues, the contextual issues in understanding these elements. And again, another Indian economist, Jayati Ghosh, came to deliver our annual conference on Albert Hirschman lecture. And again, she was calling on, why don't we move away from randomized trials that are trying to simplify the picture of economic development in a very, very linear or simplistic way. So the point here is not to ignore GDP. I don't think that we can do that. GDP is a metric that measures something that is important for the economies. But how do we bring additional elements that will help us to capture the complexity of the issues that I have just mentioned? And this is, again, an effort that Secretary Guterres did when he launched our common agenda. This was the result of our Summit of the Future of last year, where we want to bring additional elements to this discussion. And one thing that we can do, and I invite the economists of the room to think about it, is that the economic field, economics underpinnings are always looking at efficient markets. And that's fine. We need efficient markets. We need efficiency in markets. And therefore, many of the decisions, when we allocate budgets, when we decide how to distribute different elements in the economic field, are informed by efficiency. How do we ensure that we can bring equality, which is another very important element, and sustainability ex ante in the decision making? Because they are always exposed. You come, you decide, okay, the budget is going to be like this, we're going to be doing this distribution, and then we say, okay, what's the impact on the environment? But it's always exposed. What is the impact on our societies? Exposed. Yes, let's call the Minister of Social Affairs to fix the thing. But what I'm calling is, how do we avoid needing to fix the thing in trying to introduce these elements that is going to make more complex decision making, but it's not that difficult. I think we would just need to have a stress test in the economic decision making where we prove that at least we have thought what the social impact will be of those policies, what the environmental impact is going to be of those policies, and then you decide. Because at the end, leaders need to make the decisions, and many times they will need to favor efficiency, be it, but with the full knowledge of what the impact on equality and the environment is going to be. And for that, it's really important that we bring more social sciences into the equation. It's very important that we bring the insights that science like anthropology can bring, just even for fun. I have launched a program, and when I established it with some of the colleagues in UNESCO that are dealing with anthropology, we established the Digital Anthropology Program. And people are saying, what is that? Sounds very interesting, but what is that? Well, it's just to understand how communities behave in the context of the digital transformation. And again, this is not only about the economics. It's about our young people. How do they interact with the technology? What impact the technology is having in our young people? What impact does it have in certain communities when they are full with misinformation? Or what impact does it have whenever we change a production system when introducing these technologies? How do we bring workers with us in this transition? How do we re-skill and upskill? And these are very common words, the upskilling. We need to upskill our labor force. But it's so difficult to do it. How do we bring them with us to understand better what are their interests, and how do we develop agendas that are more attuned? And how do we bring this multidisciplinarity? We know, as I mentioned, now we are looking at behavioral economics, and behavioral economics has to rely on psychology. We need to understand psychology. We need to understand how people are informed in their own decision making. It's not the aggregation of all the decisions that are going to bring us the final outcome. It's the understanding of different communities and how do they address specific issues. How do we bring sociology? And sociology is making very great inroads because now, again, with artificial intelligence and the capacity to produce research, but also to have high-frequency data that is coming from different surveys and different, just by scrapping the internet, it's providing us with insights that are very useful. And sociology, because of course sociology helps us to understand power, it helps us to understand institutions and norms, it helps us to understand how our societies interact. This is not new, but I feel that as all the insights of Mr. Singh are not new, but the point is, how do we really push for it? And I think that this conference has this possibility of bringing a very strong message in terms of how to bring all these new ways of producing decision-making to deliver more sustainable solutions. And then, how do we bring some elements that are very difficult to measure? One of the great tenets of the classical economists is that we cannot manage what we cannot measure. You remember. But we cannot measure trust. We cannot measure friendship. We cannot measure happiness. And I have to say that once I worked with Secretary General Gurria, who was an amazing leader, and when we launched at the OECD the well-being framework that was calling to bring more dimensions, not only, as I said, the material well-being, the multidimensional country reviews that the Development Center here was also doing, somebody asked him, "Hey, Mr. Gurria, but are you serious? The OECD is going to be engaged in measuring happiness. My God, you're getting very weak in your old age." And he said, "Well, you know, if I was able to measure happiness, I will do it. It will be the best contribution that the economics profession can do for people. Because what people want to be happy. It's just as simple as that. Let's just forget about the rest. And then happiness is defined as they want to define it. But this is the kind of things. So what I think we should be also doing is try to be very inclusive in the definitions of what needs to be addressed. And again, consult with people. Bring people with you. Ask people, what do they care about? What do they like? And therefore, the tool of having subjective surveys, subjective well-being surveys. And again, this might be a picture because people might change mood from one day to the other, and therefore their answer today might be very different tomorrow. But at the end, we need to bring these conversations together. And let me tell you that when we finished the recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, the best element there was that we did not want to impose from UNESCO what countries need artificial intelligence for, what societies want artificial intelligence to do with them. And therefore, what we did was to create a readiness assessment methodology that we actually, India was one of the first countries that did that readiness assessment, and is looking, of course, at the traditional issues of infrastructure, skills, GPUs, supercomputing capacities or not, et cetera, skills. But we were also looking at the contextual issues. We were looking at what countries would like to do with these technologies, and for that you need a conversation. And in each country we established committees. It was the country that established the committee, bringing the civil society, bringing the business sector, bringing the academia, bringing the government, of course, and then to have a conversation to really understand where do we go and how do we frame the development of these technologies that could deliver for the highest priorities of the countries. Because it's very different what India wants to do, not only because of the size and the impressive challenges, but it's very different than what Mexico would like to do, or what the US or what Europe are, and you have seen it. Some countries decide that they are more risk takers, like the US. Some others are more risk averse, like Europe. Therefore, it's for them to decide. It's not for institutions like UNESCO to tell countries what they need to do. But at the end, to have these inclusive conversations and to listen from people in a very structured manner. Again, not as an afterthought, but actually something that helps us introduce a good compass in defining the decisions that we need to be advancing. And then a final thought, and this is the role of the state. And this is a very old discussion, again, because we were told that markets are much better at allocating resources, that markets are always going to find equilibrium, and that markets are really those that can deliver with the invisible hand although we know there is no invisibility and there is no hand. It's only power, it's only really trying to distill the many interests that come into play whenever decisions are being taken. But independently of, again, what countries want to do with their own governments and with their own states, it's very important that we invest in the capacities of the states. And this might seem completely obvious, but it's not. Again, in the context of artificial intelligence, I can tell you, and I was so impressed because I was talking with Senator Peterson from the US, and he was telling me, you know what? I don't know if we need to control all the downsides in terms of the algorithmic biases and the manipulation and the misuse of these technologies, or the negative impacts that we are now documenting and that need to be addressed. I just need to make sure that the people that are in charge of procurement in my government know what they are buying when they go to the market for these packages. As simple as that. And he introduced a bill to increase the capacities of public procurement officers to know what they're buying. And I will ask you, if you go out to buy a package of AI to improve a process that you have in your own institution, in your school, in your university, and do you have all the questions that you need to ask to make sure that that technology is not only going to deliver on the task that you are aiming at, but that is not going to have unintended consequences that then on privacy or on hallucinations, on all the other elements that we know about happens with these technologies. And therefore, when we think about these capacities of the technologies that are growing by the day, we should think about the capacities of the governments, of the universities, of people to deal with it, to understand them, and to govern them. Because it's not that the AI is going to tell us what we need to do, it's us humans that need to frame them in a way that deliver for what they are intended to do, which is to increase the well-being of people. As simple as that. And therefore, to all the challenges that I mentioned, the question of governing artificial intelligence right really brings to the core the need to invest in the capacities of governments. And then the need to invest in the capacities of governments, because governments are the ones that are going to be defining the curricula for the education systems, that are going to be supporting the teachers. I know many teachers are telling us, for example, that they are so looking forward for the tools that are going to help them to manage all the administrative work that they need to carry forward. But then you need to have very specific reforms and a very good understanding on how do we use these technologies. So not easy answers. I don't think that I have provided you with many easy answers. What I have brought together is the need to invest more in science. And maybe I would like to conclude with this reflection. When I joined UNESCO, I actually didn't even know that UNESCO is the institution in the UN system that is in charge of promoting science, to promote investment in science, and to promote the use of science for policy making. And I can tell you the outlook in many places is not looking as good as it should. Scientists are being put under a lot of pressure in some countries because of the work they do, because of the research they do. They are being defunded if the projects are not to the likes of the powers that be. They're finding difficulties to continue their research. And therefore here, in this magnificent university, I think it's very important that we reflect how much scientists need our support, how much the governments need to be investing in science ecosystems that will deliver for themselves, because science is not only for action, but also for reflection and for finding explanations of the very different phenomena that we confront, but then also science for policy making. And in this quest, of course, I invite you. We have at UNESCO a very interesting program that is the managing of social transformation with Professor Chaturvedi is one of our advisors. And it's this link between promoting and protecting scientists and science and bringing it forward for decision making. So let's just try to push this agenda forward. Let's try to honor the memory of Mr. Singh. Let's try to abide by the lessons that we have learned in so many years and trying to distill these notions. And then let's work together to deliver but much better for people. Thank you so much for inviting me, and looking forward to our exchanges.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gabriela Ramos, for your thoughtful and scholarly lecture. If Mr. Tarlok Singh, wherever he is, listening to your lecture, he would be certainly very happy that you have given such a big canvas. So thank you very much. I'm not going to summarize your lecture, but the lessons that we got, as the world is very complex, policies have become more complex, but there is need of now working, investing more in science, working with social scientists to, and not only social scientists, now natural scientists and all that, to solve the complex problems of the world, including global south. That is why the rise of behavioral economics in the world, which deals with psychology and all that. So your message is very appropriate for our IASSI, which, at least for social sciences, interdisciplinary research, Tarlok Singh had taught 45 years ago. And that is why I said that he will be very happy if he's listening to your lecture. So thank you very much for coming here, and thank very much Dr. Sachin Chaturvedi for bringing her here. So thank you. Friends, you have not to go. This session will continue because nobody can go now as security. People are sanitizing the place because governor is coming. So please be inside here.
So that brings us to the end of this very enriching lecture. Yes, this calls for a group photograph, please. I request the stage team to please prepare the stage for the next session. All of you, please remain seated. We'll immediately start with the next plenary session.